Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. CJ, we're going to look at an article you did over at ontexasfootball.com. The goal for 2026 looked like 2024. And we talked a lot on the channel this week about the offensive line. A lot of this goes back to what Sark said in the Monday press conference regarding Lawrence Seymour and his eligibility. But you kind of center this piece around Melvin Siani, and I'll give you the floor, CJ. The premise is that the goal for the 2026 offensive line should be to replicate in their way what you got in 2024.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely going to be kind of that focal point of, hey, if you achieve this, you'll have significantly more success offensively if you're Texas. And what I mean by that is, hey, we know that the offensive line was not a strength. I'm breaking no news here, Jeff, whenever I say that. Folks probably tired of listening to it by now, but there's ways to get back to an explosive, high-scoring offense without necessarily having a significantly great offensive line. And what you need your offensive line to look like is kind of that 2024 package. And what I mean by that is, hey, they were pretty good in pass protection. They gave your quarterback ample opportunities to sit back in the pocket, dissect defenses, and get the ball where it needed to go, to a plethora of wide receivers that can make plays down the field. Now, was your running game elite? Probably not. Was it average? Probably so, but it got the job done at times. So look, with Texas going out and adding Hollywood Smothers and Raleek Brown, does that mean that they're going to vault up to the top of the SEC's rushing standings? Well, they could. Those guys are super talented. But right now, with the unknown of a Lawrence Seymour, how will Brandon Baker acclimate to the guard spot? What will the ultimate push on the interior look like in the run game? It's an unknown. So to rely on that, probably not the spot. But, Jeff, what I do know, you have two tackles that are probably going to be in the conversation for the best tackle tandem, and not just the conference, but the entire country, with Melvin Siani and Trevor Goosby. Pass protection must improve, and I bet it does. And should it, Texas will go back to being one of the most explosive teams in the entire country.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's some tweets circulating, and it's not just on Twitter, but it's all over various social media platforms, as draft analysts are starting to break down various players for the draft. Some of Arch's 2025 clips are starting to get out. And one that's really gotten a lot of run is, man, look how much he was pressured against Florida.
Yeah.
We said it at the time, CJ, and people just didn't want to believe us. I don't know. It's not like we cover Texas and have a pulse on what's going on inside Moncrief. It's not like we have that or anything. But it's like, hey, if you just looked at the box score, you're like, oh, Arch didn't play very well. But if you watch that game, it's like, it's amazing he didn't turn the ball over more than he did, that he got out of there without a significant injury, that they actually had a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter. And we talked about how his athleticism and his ability to make plays and extend plays really was the identity of the offense. And I say that, CJ, because you looked at pressure rates in your piece, and the extremely low pressure rates for Arch's two starts in 2024 compared to some of these games in 2025. And goodness gracious, the one that jumps out, the Florida game, 61.9% of the time Arch dropped back, he was under some type of pressure. It goes to show you, I don't care how good you are, when you're facing pressure, legit pressure on about 2/3 of your snaps, it's going to be a really tough day at the office.
Oh, it definitely is. There aren't many quarterbacks that will succeed in an enormous, crazy amount of pressure anyways, but that rate in which we saw in Gainesville is just a recipe for disaster. And real quick, a couple of numbers here for you. I went back because, we had the conversation, I believe on Monday with Rod Baber saying, that time that we looked and saw Arch Manning in 2024, and the reason why expectations were so high is because, look, we watched the deep connections. We watched the accurate passes vertically down the field. And the one thing that whenever you go back and you watch that, you sit there and you say, well, he had a lot of time. He had a lot of room to maneuver in that pocket. And, of course, you're working behind three guys that got drafted, a center that logged the most career snaps of any Texas player in the history of the program. And, DJ Campbell's going to end up getting drafted this year as well, who was your right guard. So, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. Now, can what you put on the field in 2024, can that come back in 2026? Because, look, Texas, talented, talked about the tackles. You have a veteran fifth-year center. Lawrence Seymour was a Phil Steele second-team All-American as well. Now it's just about piecing together the rest of that cohesiveness. And the numbers I wanted to mention here, he had a 20% pressure rate in his first career start against ULM. That's 6 pressures on 30 dropbacks. Pretty good. Mississippi State, the first SEC game that he started, 6 pressures on 35 dropbacks. So that's a 17% pressure rate. That's as low as Arch has seen in his career at Texas. And that's kind of the mark that I wanted to get to, is if you can get to about a 25 to 28% pressure rate, that's in the line for being a really good offense. I've got some numbers we'll get to here in a sec. I just wanted to throw this out there. Arch's pressure rate in 2025, Jeff, about 36.4%. So you talk about constantly be under duress, not being able to evaluate and scan the field. Life sure was difficult in 2025, and it just takes a little bit of a tweaking to get back to those elite numbers that we've talked about previously.
Well, and I think, and again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. You found that winning combination on the offensive line, at least one that got to competent. It got up to competent when you left Connor Robertson at center, and then when Cole Hudson came back from the injury, you moved him over to left guard. And CJ, I think the prime example of that is one of the numbers you threw out there. There were 3 games last year in which Arch faced a pressure rate of 25% or less. Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and Michigan, all games in the back half of the season. You average 42 points a game as an offense in those games. And likewise, you look at the games where the pressure rate was 45% or more, Florida, Oklahoma, and Kentucky. You know, Arch's playmaking ability went a long way towards you winning that Oklahoma game. And against Kentucky and Florida, that might have been the 2 worst games the offense played all year. So to your point, yeah, when you give Arch time, he's an elite quarterback. But even when he's pressured, if he's pressured an exorbitant amount, like all quarterbacks, it's going to be really hard for him to maximize what he brings to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going back to those numbers, if you're pressured 45 to, I mean, even just 50% of your dropbacks, what are you expected to do? And of course, it's very difficult to then generate a run game knowing that pressure is going to be there up in the front. But 1 touchdown scored against Kentucky, 1 touchdown against Oklahoma, and boy, we don't need to rehash that Florida game more than what we've talked about. But I have some numbers elsewhere from Quinn Ewers' his last 2 seasons at Texas and what that offensive line looked like as well. 28% is what it was in 2024. Again, Quinn, not the athlete that Arch is, but you sit there in that 25 to 28 range and you have yourself the makings of an offensive line and an offense in general that will be able to score and be explosive. 2023, 23.7% pressure rate for Quinn Ewers in that offensive line. That's really where the conversation about the Joe Moore and that pass protection really started to buzz and build. So that's kind of the range that I'm looking at. We'll see where this upcoming Texas offensive line sits, Jeff. But if you can just, I know for Arch, it's going to feel like he's playing behind a brand new offensive line. But if you can knock a 1/10 of that pressure rate off and allow the quarterback to sit back and feel like he has time to scan the field, you're going to see Texas return to a top 10 level of offensive explosivity, which is exactly what we saw in 2023 and 2024.
Where the margin for error, CJ, comes in for this offensive line is, again, it goes back to Arch's athleticism and his playmaking ability. You look at the pressure to sack rate is really a key stat to look at. Quinn's pressure to sack rate was about 23% in 2024, according to PFF. Arch's pressure to sack rate, 13.3%. That was one of the best. If you start looking at their metrics of quarterbacks who were pressured and minimum attempts, like it was a top 20 pressure to sack rate in the country. And we know Arch is an athlete. But CJ, here's my question to tie this all together. Rod and I talked about this on Football Theory, so I'll ask you, do you have faith in Sark that he can, one, find run game schemes, run game concepts, and call an offense that's going to fit what the offensive line personnel can do? 2, are you confident that this offensive line personnel is, at the end of the day, going to be an upgrade over what you had last year? And then 3, can Sark be dedicated to having an offense that plays with a physical edge, not abandon the run, really do whatever it takes to establish the run. So that way your RPOs and your play action passes and your deep shots are more effective. And I guess the fourth part of that is, can Sark, and it's really tempting with Arch, but I think Sark at his core wants to be a guy that hunts shot plays. Can he put that to the side, suppress that need to go hunting for the shot play to kind of establish the run and help out this offensive line, help out your quarterback? In other words, CJ, do you trust Sark to push the right buttons to get the most out of this offense?
I say yes, and I do believe this. And I say yes because over the years we have seen, clear deficiencies on teams in the year before be immediately fixed and addressed going into the next season. So for Sark, when it comes to, and Rod Bead calls it playing the hits, right? Playing what works. When we talk about the identity of an offense, not straying away from it is going to be key. I think what we saw towards the back end of the year was, hey, they knew what worked with Arch Manning. We knew that if things broke down, hey, take off. Protect yourself, but take off. And so I look at games against Vanderbilt. Obviously, Arkansas is not a great defense, but Michigan at the end, those were games in which the vertical pass worked, the quick screen game worked, and Arch's legs really got you where you needed to go. So that's something that I do believe Sark will continue to dial up, knowing that, hey, we have the talent that can match just about anybody else in the country when it comes to the receiving core, the backs in the backfield. We've talked about the offensive tackles, and, Arch Manning. Now it's just about finding and calculating what essentially is your best fit, in which you have plenty of options if your number one choice does not necessarily pan out.
Yeah, I think this offensive line from a personnel standpoint I'm confident in the other stuff because, like you said, Sark has shown a willingness to change things up, even if at times I've been a little frustrated that in game he might be a little late to figure out what works. But at the end of the day, like you said, the fumble problem, CJ going from 24 to 25 is one of those deals that got fixed year over year. So I'm confident in that stuff. For me, it's the personnel, and I feel like the personnel you've got on this offensive line as we wrap this up, it's going to be a better pass blocking unit if you just look at the pieces. My thing is, who's going to be your third tackle? Because you go back to that 2024 offensive line, Trevor Gooseby was your third tackle, and you had time where Kelvin Banks missed time. You had games where Cam Williams missed time, and Gooseby was great as your third tackle. And then that left guard position, if Lawrence Seymour isn't eligible, your margin for error becomes so much smaller because, hey, either Dylan Sikorsky is going to be able to start and play well and be a really good piece of this line, or you could have a situation where you've got a revolving door at left guard for the second year in a row if Seymour's not eligible. So, CJ, that's my concern is personnel-wise, you're good. I just want to see, and really this isn't something that we're going to find out until, one, Seymour gets his waiver, the determination of his waiver, and two, we figure out who the number 3 tackle is. So I guess for me, my concerns aren't going to be proven right or wrong, valid or invalid until you get into the season.
Yeah. And again, if the pass protection is there, if you're able to give Arch Manning that clean pocket, Texas will be a top 5 scoring offense. Texas will be the explosive offense that we had known or had seen over the last couple of years, come to know pretty consistently with Steve Sarkisian. A couple more numbers I wanted to throw out in terms of other quarterbacks and their pressure to drop back ratio. Julian Sand, 26.4.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Gunnar Stockton, 26.2. Trinidad Chambliss, 22.8. And this is the one that really blew my mind. Carson Beck with a 16.8% pressure to drop back ratio. I mean, that's just, you have all day. You could water your flowers. You could, basically write a book back there, Jeff. So
yeah.
If Arch Manning gets anything close to that 25% range, Texas is going to be in a perfect position for next year.
Good stuff, CJ. I agree 100%. And again, with Arch's athleticism, the pressure sack rate again should be pretty low. As our guy Rod Baber says, the scramble is the most effective play in football. Hopefully Arch doesn't have to use it as much as he did last year. If the pass protection is there. Good stuff, CJ. Thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, big things coming on the website in 2026. Really excited about where we're going on the website. Make sure you get over there and check out everything that we've got, all the news, notes, and nuggets that everybody's dropping. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whenever we drop a video or go live, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, hook 'em.